Hello. Now that is the new Polestar 5, and I'm going to tell you everything that you need to know about it. I'm Jordan, and you're watching Auto Express. Okay, it feels like a fair old while since we've sort of seen the Polestar 5, doesn't it? But I'm happy to say that this is pretty much the production car that we're going to see on sale at the end of 2025. This is all based on that Precept concept that they made a very long time ago, and it's been a pretty lengthy development period, but I'm happy to say that it looks absolutely incredible in the flesh, and I really do mean that. So let's run through the design on the outside because there is loads to go through. So first of all, here is that front end that is very distinctly Polestar. We can see we've got these sort of split headlights here into two units, and then there's sort of no main grille. You can kind of hear a whirring. That's because the air conditioning's on. It's quite warm today. We've got one single air intake down here, and then this is what they call the smart zone. So this is where all of the sensors and cameras and all of that sort of stuff are, and it packages it all into one very nice, very clean looking front end. Now, as we move to the side, this is a test vehicle. This is why we've got stickers on it, but the main thing that you sort of notice when you're stood next to it is that it's really low. In fact, it's only 142 centimeters tall, which means that it's incredibly low considering there are batteries under the floor. Now down the side, this car's got the 21-inch alloys. There are 22-inch options available as well. And then if we go down the side, we can see that the surfacing is really crisp and really tight. We've got this sort of section here that kind of makes it look a little bit lighter and more agile and more sort of on its feet. And then this really slick tail that is absolutely quintessential Polestar. Now, a couple of cool details here. First of all, this little bit here, as you can kind of see, it says there charging status. Now this is actually a visual cue as to the charging status of the car at any one time. That's pretty cool. Now, of course, you've got a phone app as well, so it's not really necessary, but it's a nice little design flourish. And then around the back, you can see we've got a completely clean rear end. Now, the Polestar 4 was the first one without any form of sort of rear window, and this is the same thing. But here, it's actually probably a little bit more useful because the car is so incredibly low. We've got a fantastically cool sort of slick light bar that here acts pretty much as the windbreak, and then also a really clever looking diffuser. What's clear here is that the Polestar 5 in the flesh looks absolutely mega, but it's just as cool inside. The first thing that you notice is that despite the fact that it is very low, it's actually incredibly spacious. Now we'll get into why in a second, but first of all, let's just go through the design because we've got something here that looks very similar to a Polestar 3, and that is no bad thing. So we've got this really clean, minimalist design dashboard with a bit of timber in there, and then a portrait style screen. We'll go into that in a little second. In front of the driver, there is also another 9-inch display and the steering wheel, which is unique to Polestar models and also looks really contemporary. The other thing that you notice is that the windscreen and the windows are very shallow. I mean, that is why the shape is as it is, but sat in the back, this enormous glass roof, which is standard, completely changes the whole aspect of the interior. It does not feel cramped, it does not feel small, it feels incredibly spacious. And I'm sat behind, obviously, a slightly shorter driver, and there is absolutely loads of legroom, but also there's loads of footroom as well. Now, you can't really tell from this aspect, but this is kind of dug out as if it were like a big sort of trough because the batteries have been taken out to make it comfortable in the back seats, and it really is really comfortable. Polestar says that this is a 4+1 seater, so this central armrest will go up. It's not a particularly comfortable place to sit, I'm not gonna lie, and even though I'm quite short, my head does sit quite close to the roof. But as a 4-seater, which is what this car's really going to be used as at most, things are pretty comfortable back here. But let's go to the front seat and talk about what's up there. From behind the wheel, the first thing that strikes you is it feels pretty snug in here. And that is once again because the car sits incredibly low for the sort of car that it is. So the windscreen, although visibility out front is quite good, is quite narrow, and the roof feels quite low. And I'm quite short and the seat is all the way down. So that might be a consideration if you're a taller driver. However, the fact that the glass roof doesn't have any form of cover does actually mean that actual headroom is very good. So a 14.5-inch portrait-style infotainment screen is standard on all models, and it's the same sort of unit we see in the Polestar 3, which is excellent news. It is Google backed up, which means that all you need to do is log in with your normal Google account and all of your favorites will show up. That is excellent. And then underneath that are these sort of 4 tiles that are completely variable. So you can change the shortcuts, you can get quick access to your phone, to all sorts of things, including performance data, which is another nice way of going straight to your sort of drive modes and that sort of thing. But if we go back, we also then have here a completely static set of air conditioning controls. They work really well, and because they're always there, you're never going looking for them. So even though it would be nice to have maybe some physical controls, I really don't think it's such a big deal, especially when you get used to it. There is one physical control, which is this lovely volume control, and also stop start, which is for the stereo. That's excellent. In front of the driver is another display, and this is super clean and simple. There is actually very little that is shown here aside from the basics. Above that, we also then have a head-up display, and then little things like the fact that none of the plastics here are sort of just vinyl vinyl wrapped plastics. Everything feels incredibly well thought out and well designed. Whilst we're here, let's talk a bit about storage. So we've got a couple of cup holders here that sit in this quite nice mechanism, and that kind of floats above this section here where there's a couple of places for you to leave your phone as well as some wireless charging. It's a little bit awkward to sort of access, but it comes with the nature of this type of layout. We've also got a couple of USB-C ports there as well, which are very useful. And then we have here a center console with sort of tray that you can sort of take out, and it goes quite a lot deeper. It's not too bad. You can fit some pretty decent stuff in there. In terms of the overall driving position though, I think this is a really interesting and engaging way of driving EVs. It feels kind of like a Porsche Taycan, which is really the intention here. There's also a special shout out to what is probably going to be one of the best stereos of any car on sale. This is the Bowers & Wilkins option, and as it is used on the Polestar 3, it is absolutely incredible. Another nice thing is that the air vents do not require you to go into the screen to change their direction. Hallelujah. In terms of other things you need to know, now these touch controls on the steering wheel are just that, they're touch controls. They don't change, and they don't actually light up as well, which might be a little bit frustrating, but you can't deny that the steering wheel itself looks pretty elegant. In terms of your main controls, we've also got here a gear selector, and we have our indicators and our wipers on that side. Once you're used to the way that a Polestar operates, it is really intuitive. One thing that I am going to mention though, it's nice to see that we've got a really slick sort of door handle arrangement here, but we have the single-use window switches, which I find very annoying. Okay, now in terms of driving experience, everything is about to be revealed, but let's start with this model here because it is the top spec performance version. So we have a 112 kilowatt hour battery and 650 kilowatts, which equates to around 900 horsepower, which is an incredible amount of power. Do you need that sort of power? Well, I don't really think so, but should a car like this have that sort of power in a world where not only the Porsche Taycan Turbo exists, but also all sorts of Chinese competition that are coming through? Yeah, okay, it kind of needs it, and that I completely understand. In terms of boot space, it isn't the biggest boot in the world, but remember this is comparable to something like a Taycan, so we're not really talking about having enormous space here. We've got a nice flat floor, and underneath you can see here we've got this sort of cool shopping bag holder and also a place underneath to store the cables. The good news is that it's not the only boot, however, because there's also some space here at the front. You can see that there's actually plenty of space here for a charging bag and also probably a couple of soft bags as well. Ignore that is there because this is a prototype, but effectively you also get a really good boot space up front as well. Now just quickly, whilst I have you, did you actually know that you can buy and sell your car at autoexpress.co.uk? So if that's something that you want to do, make sure you click the link in the description below and we'll run you through the process. All right, now this is a prototype, so we obviously can't get too involved into its on-road performance, but first thing that you notice, this does not feel like a Polestar 4. It feels completely different. It's very much so a sports car in terms of its responses. The steering is really tight and linear and really nicely progressive, and the ride, although quite stiff, is still really compliant. Now there are different drive modes in the sense of we can adjust the suspension and the steering and the performance as well, but all of them feel really usable. But here on the sort of Alpine track that we've got at our little test center, we've sort of got the middle settings for both, and really the car drives incredibly well. It is worth mentioning that this does have some pretty tough rivals. We're talking cars like the Porsche Taycan and the Audi e-tron GT, but by that comparison, I would definitely say this has got some particularly good legs. Something that this car does have an advantage of which we kind of made mention previously, is that there's loads of rear space, which is excellent. But I would say, if you're looking for the ultimate smoothness, I think maybe an e-tron GT on those air springs is probably a little bit better. But really, this is quite a lot more satisfying to drive, and that's all down to the geniuses that have been setting it up. Okay, now that was a super quick walk around, and yes, this is still a pre-prod car, but what is my initial thoughts? Well, the word game changer gets used a lot, let's not lie. And let's be honest, the notion of a premium, very fast, four-door electric car isn't new. Porsche have been there for a fair few years now, and quite a few other competitors as well. But what makes this car different is that it's been designed to be clever. It's been designed in a really interesting way by really interesting, passionate people that really know what they're doing. So we'll have to wait till we get on the road to be absolutely sure, but this thing might be that game changer that I'm pretty sure Polestar was always on track to do. So far things look good.